Hi, I'm David Barr Kirtley, host of the Geek's Guide to the Galaxy podcast. The following conversation originally appeared in episode 116 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. To learn more, visit us at geeksguideshow.com. And for our panel, we'll be discussing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and this will involve spoilers for all the Ninja Turtles movies, including the one that just came out, so just be aware of that. And like Leonardo, I'm joined today by three teammates. So first up, we've got Matt London, making his 12th appearance on the show. He's the author of The Eighth Continent, an eco-adventure sci-fi novel which comes out on September 16th. He's also the creator of the web series Space Pirates in Space, and author of the Nickelodeon book Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mad Libs. So Matt, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Then next up, we've got Allison Hayslip, who you may remember from our panel on the Nintendo Entertainment System back in episode 114. She's an actress and TV personality who's appeared on G4, The Voice on NBC, The Nerdist and The Nerd Machine, as well as in various film and TV projects including Battleground, Saturn Returns, Video Games the Movie, and the Team Unicorn Saturday Action Fun Hour. So Allison, thanks for joining us.
Cowabunga, dudes!
And also joining us today for the very first time is writer and director David Wexler. He's the creator and producer of MTV's reality show College Life, and he wrote and directed the feature films Evil Weed and The Stand-Up, as well as the upcoming movies Anchors and Turtle Island. So David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and so the first thing I'd like to do is just go around and have everyone talk a little bit about how big of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan are you, and are you most familiar with the cartoon, video games, movies, that sort of stuff? So I'll just say, as I've said before, I was a huge Saturday morning cartoon fan growing up. And so I was definitely first introduced to the Turtles through the Saturday morning cartoon. And I spent a lot of my childhood doodling Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in class. And then I was also a huge fan of the first feature film that came out, I think in about 1990. The live action one, I watched that probably dozens of times. And so those are definitely that's sort of where my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fandom centers. How about Allison? Tell us about your Teenage Mutant I can't even say it, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fandom.
Well, mine is very similar to yours. I definitely watched the, you say Saturday morning cartoon, but I think it was on every day for a while.
It was because I watched it every day.
Yeah, exactly. But I definitely watched that religiously. I was also obsessed with the arcade game, the side-scrolling arcade game. There was a Pizza Hut that was like probably a half hour from where I lived growing up, and my brother and I used to beg my parents to bring us there every weekend so we could play the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game there. And then, I've seen all the movies. I think the only thing I haven't done is read the comics.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Pizza Hut because obviously the Turtles are big fans of pizza. And on our Facebook page, William Ryan says, "I love the old TMNT promotion that Pizza Hut did." Does anyone remember Pizza Hut doing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover?
They did it in the new movie, though, right? They sponsored it, but I don't remember the first one.
I don't remember that either, but that sounds fitting.
Vaguely familiar to me, but I don't remember the specifics. Tell us, Dave. Tell us.
I don't know. No, this was someone on Facebook.
She was actually asking us.
Yeah, no, that was a legitimate, non-rhetorical question. All right, well, if nobody knows, how about David? Tell us about your, what do you like about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Well, I was like 5 at the time when it came out, so in a crazy way, it's like my first real memories are all Ninja Turtle memories. And in the new Turtle Power documentary, which is really cool, they talk about it was just such a brilliant marketing campaign that they kind of had, the video games hit, when the animated series hit, the toys hit, it kind of like all hit and just took over. So, I mean, I loved the cartoon as well, clearly, but it was more than that. It was like the bed sheets, the lunch boxes. It was kind of just this mass thing.
Wait, did you have turtle bed sheets or lunch boxes, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, we all did. So, yeah, it was kind of all at the same time.
So, what other paraphernalia did you have? Was there anything even more extreme than that?
Yeah, I mean, we had. What was cool about the Halloween costumes was that it was just like the armbands and the knee pads, and then and then like the nose face mask thing, but it was kind of real, you know. It was like you didn't have to wear the nose thing. You could kind of just be like a skateboarding ninja and like put the knee pads over like the rollerblade pads, you know what I mean? So it was kind of official. And then, you know, growing up in New York, and skating around the manholes, it really felt like we were Ninja Turtles. I mean, it was very strange, but I would wear that stuff to school. Trying to think of what else was really crazy. No, I think the bed sheets was as far as I really.
Well, wait. So when you dressed up for Halloween, which turtle did you dress up as? I
think I was like, like Raphael was kind of like Raphael was my favorite.
You're totally a Raphael.
I think I was always I'm cool but rude, right? That's what they say. Actually, yeah. I was just watching the TV show, and it was so weird how it just like brought back all these old memories. But I was watching the first episode of the show, and when you used to sing along to things, like obviously I knew every word except one word, and it was the cool but rude thing, and I never knew what they said, and I would always put in different words, but I finally got it. I think it's cool but rude. I finally figured that out.
That's definitely it.
Yeah.
Well, wait, so, because that's funny, because if you're Raphael, I would identify with Leonardo. And
I'm
Allison totally strikes me as a Michelangelo, exactly.
Yeah.
So like,
Matt, you're
are you Donatello? We can have all four if you
this
Donatello.
is just like when I would play the arcade game with my brother and his friends, they would always make me be Donatello because it was the least popular one. So once again,
Donatello was the best in the arcade game because his staff kept them so far away. Like, he got to stay out of harm's way because his weapon was so long.
He had the best reach with the bow staff. That's true. That's a technique that they actually use in a lot of the Turtles games. So there is they had to sweeten the deal for who got stuck playing Donatello. I'll take it. Sure. I'm a nerd.
All right. So that works out perfectly. But Matt, I mean, in your email to me, you described yourself, I think, as the biggest Turtles fan I've ever seen, something like that.
Well, it's funny. I wonder if every kid kind of feels that way, because already just listening to people talk about their experiences, it's like, oh yeah, the Pizza Huts all had the arcade game, and oh my gosh, I just remembered that face mask where they would give you a band, like the Halloween costume had a bandana, and so you tie it on, but then it had like a protrusion dangling from the thing, so it was like just the green nose.
Right.
It was the weirdest thing. It was like an old like Groucho glasses kind of thing. But turtle nose. So these are things that I'm remembering now just talking about it. But I was really obsessed. Like, I was like that stereotypical kid who would watch an episode of the show and go, I need a truck that shoots pizzas out the front like frisbees. I need this immediately. And so pretty much multiple years worth of allowance went exclusively to Ninja Turtles action figures and associated vehicles. So I was really into it. I watched the show as much as I could. I had the first 6 or 7 episodes on VHS, which I think had been part of a promotional thing with some other fast food or fast casual restaurant. So I would watch those just over and over and over again. And then, each movie was like a religious experience, going on the pilgrimage to the theater. And then the games, of course, even from that first sort of infamous Nintendo console game all the way through like the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis era, every game that came out, I was like, that the day it was out, I had to get it.
And that was the hardest one. I mean, that console game, the first NES game was a nightmare because it was like, I was so excited that I could finally play this game, and it just ruined your life. Because I don't even think I made it past the first level.
No, classic Nintendo hard. I mean, and the other weird thing about that game is that like nothing in it except the characters of the Turtles themselves have anything to do with the like Ninja Turtles. You're like fighting flying robot bugs, and there are these giant steamrollers that are trying to kill you. Doesn't make any sense at all. But it was just like, it was an incredibly challenging game. Some of the levels were just near impossible. And I've gone back and tried to play through it. I still can't beat that game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I had forgotten that, but I went and watched a Let's Play of it, and I remembered there's this part where you have to swim underwater and disarm these bombs.
Right.
And it just brought back all these horrible memories of how, I think it's like level 2 or something. Yeah. I never could make it past that.
Well, it's that what happens is whenever you get zapped by electricity under the water, it freezes, and your TV makes the harshest, most unbearable noise you can imagine.
Oh, yes.
And you'd get stuck, and so it would just do it over and over and over again.
It's games like that remind me that we were much better gamers back then than we are now. Like, there was a skill to making it through games at the end when you didn't have save points like we do now.
Right. I remember the menu would get, like, whoever was helping you on that mission, whether it's April or Splinter or someone, would give you hints, but the hint would always be like, yeah, you should disarm these bombs quickly. It's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for your help. Appreciate it. Or, like, there's one where I remember we finally beat that second level. My brother and I would, like, alternate lives and levels in Nintendo. And so we finally beat that underwater bomb defusal mission. And then it opens, it's like, now you're in the streets of New York. And we were so excited. So we push pause to look at the map. And it is this rat maze, this gigantic mess of white squiggly lines. No way to tell where you are or where you're going. There is no reprieve in that game. It's just punishment after punishment.
Yeah.
Well, how about the 4-player arcade Allison mentioned? That was, I remember that being a lot of fun and
that was my
not
favorite.
Unfairly hard either.
No.
Multiple years I had birthday parties at the local arcade, and each time I would always insist that, like, my friends would team up with me and play all 4 players on that arcade game so that we could power our way through the whole thing. It's cool. That game is awesome.
And the graphics were, like, amazing. In that game. It was kind of like when Virtua Fighter came out. It was just, like, so ahead of its time. Those graphics was amazing.
Well, and it was so smartly made for, like, younger kids to be able to play, because you could get far in that game just by constantly hitting the attack button and pushing forward.
And like, inserting quarters.
Yes, in quarters, obviously. But like I was saying with Donatello, like, if you just kept whipping Donatello's bow staff back and forth, no one was getting near you. You can make it through half the game just doing that.
Someone was telling me there's an optimal number of turtles to play that game with, having to do with the difficulty curve.
Like, it's not 4?
It's 4. Because, so one player is a certain difficulty level, 2 increases in difficulty, 3 increases more, and 4 then goes back to the difficulty of 2 to kind of reward you for having all 4 there. This is a factoid. I don't know why I know it, but I know it, and I'm a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
Well, Matt mentioned the action figures. How about Allison and David? Did you guys collect the action figures as well?
Oh, hells yeah.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say this. I have about 40 of them under my bed as we speak. I mean, in pretty good condition, because they were substantial. You can knock those around. They were unbelievable.
Yeah, they were durable.
Very durable.
They were short and stocky.
And what was so cool is that they were, like, the size of a G.I. Joe, but yeah, like you said, stocky, but they were all different colored, which was interesting. Because, right, like the TV show and the movies, I think all the turtles were the same color, but here, to differentiate them.
Yeah, their skin color was different.
Their skin tone was a little different, which was very interesting. It made them kind of look very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, there was interesting stuff about that in the Turtle Power documentary you mentioned, because there were all these villains they mentioned that I'd never heard of. I mean, just dozens and dozens of monsters. It just seemed like for a while, anything somebody at the toy company drew on a piece of paper, they'd make a toy out of it and put it in a box.
Yeah. Well, I think they were trying to make enemies out of regular people around New York, but then you realize, like, who really wants to see turtles defeat a fireman? Like, you want to root for the fireman. So they would have to make them, like, also affected by the ooze and the sludge and all that. So they became these, like, mutant people who did weird things.
It was basically anything anthropomorphic, right? I mean, it was like, sewer face man or whatever. I mean, they just got crazy with it. But then they started going back and putting them in the cartoons. Like, I remember I had a guy named Rat King, and, like, Rat King then became a villain in the TV show. But they did that really well, again, like, where they would tie all these different worlds in. I still haven't seen anything like that, I don't think, since.
Well, I think it's interesting, to talk about the documentary. They decided to make the action figures first and then made the cartoon to sell the action figures. And I don't know of any other property that's done it in that order, Like, I think cartoons hit it off, and then they're like, oh, let's make action figures out of them. But Turtles, I think, is the only one where they were like, we need to make action figures, but we need kids to want these action figures, so let's make a cartoon. So they very easily like made up all these action figures and then threw them into the cartoon somehow.
Yeah, and I think that given the age we all are, we were basically introduced to Turtles by the cartoon or something around that time. But there was the comic that came first, and I never actually saw the comic at all. But I had some sort of hipster friends who would be like, "Oh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is so mainstream now. Like, it used to be just this cool, edgy indie comic." And I don't but did any of you guys ever actually seen the comic book?
Yeah, I have it. It's funny. It was one of those things where I think the first couple of trades got re-released in the early 90s when the movies were coming out. So I picked it up then thinking it was just comics, and I was struck by how tonally different it was. And what irritated me the most was that all four of them had red headbands.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really tell them apart.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why that upset me so much. I was like, it's not right. But of course, originally that was how it was done. And it's, what's interesting is that the story of the comics does keep to, the movie borrows a lot from the original comics, which I think is actually kind of interesting when you watch it again. And then the comics themselves, they're very dark and violent. They're much more accent on the ninja, whereas the cartoon was much more accent on the teenage, I think.
So are they always holding weapons so you can tell them apart?
They sometimes have weapons. I think sometimes I don't think there's even like a...
Did it have a letter on the belt?
No.
I don't I don't remember. But I also think that they're not as partial. They're not as like particular about who's using what weapon at any given time. So it's much more flexible. I don't know why they decided to make it more rigid when they turned it into a series, although, I can guess. But yeah, the comic it's dark and weird. The monsters are a lot scarier. I think April's role is much more mature and interesting than it is in the cartoon.
Don't they kill Shredder in the first issue?
It's early. Yeah. So it's like it's very different. And much more, I think I don't know, it was the 80s, and it kind of feels like one of those darker, kind of edgier comics from that era.
Well, it feels like a Frank Miller comic, kind of.
Yeah, a lot like that. And I know that there's like some, there was a connection between Eastman and Laird and Frank Miller, that I know Eastman and Laird were big fans of Daredevil. There's a lot of like Daredevil Easter eggs in the comic. The biggest one being, the Hand and the Foot Clan. So it's like there are all of these connections.
What's cool though with like Miller and like even Watchmen or and I've seen the first comic since, but I was older when I came across it. But even the original TV show, New York, right? It always kind of looked the same in all of those things. Like if you just see the backgrounds in like the Turtles show, it actually kind of looks like the Watchmen backgrounds. It was like this very neon-y, crime was, I think, much, at a very high rate back then. But it's weird that background of New York feels very similar in all of those comics. And it was kind of, right, and like all these vigilante comics were coming out right around that time. I wonder what the correlation was.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, Matt mentioned which weapons the different turtles have, and did anyone else feel that Raphael really got the short end of the stick on that one? Like, as a kid, I always thought that his weapon just seemed so much less effectual than all the other turtles' weapons.
That's funny. I actually thought Leonardo always got the short end of the stick because his was boring compared to the other three. I was like, oh, he has swords. Whatever.
I remember the Psy was hard to say when I was younger for whatever reason. I never really knew what it was.
The Psys were cool though. You could like block sword attacks and stuff with it.
Yeah.
You could stab mousers in the head, shake them around. I don't know. I like the Psys. Raphael's such a good fighter. He doesn't need full length swords. He can just handle it with the Psys.
Yeah, I always wondered if that was why he was so angry because he got the crummy weapon, or if he just had to be so hyper aggressive to compensate for his lack of range.
Right.
I also, it's funny. Raphael, I think, is the character of the four of them that's gotten the most sort of like character maintenance from iteration to iteration. That like in the movie, he's very in the original film, he's very like he's the grumpy one, he's the Wolverine of the group.
Yes.
Whereas like in the cartoon, he's more like Matthew Perry on Friends, just like always kind of like making snarky comments.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, David. I mean, you're our resident Raphael here, right? What do you think about that?
No, I think that's spot on. It's very funny. And yeah, I mean, I saw the newest film too. He was super aggressive. I think that's one of my favorite parts in the new film, when he kind of he's becoming nice, as they all think that they're gonna kind of wind up dead at the end. That's a funny kind of bit. But yeah, I think I think he has the biggest tonal shifts. I think Michelangelo's is always the kind of, he's steady, right? I mean, his always, he's always the same kind of guy. I loved Raphael's voice though in the first series. It was a fun kind of little snarky-ish voice. But then I noticed it get much darker, as the years passed.
Yeah, they do a good job of making him feel like the outcast in the new movie. The one who just doesn't quite fit in.
Actually, okay, before we get to the new movie, maybe we should go through the different movies that have come out and say what we think of them. So I already said I was totally obsessed with the 1990 version. Were you guys similarly obsessed with that movie?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, I even like the second one, even though people give it a lot of flack. But I remember my grandmother taking me to the movies to see that second one. And Vanilla Ice, man. How do you not like that?
Was that Go Ninja Go Ninja Go?
Oh, yeah.
There were actually a lot of things in the second one that I liked, too. One of the things that I walked out of the first one being disappointed in as a kid was I was expecting the show. I wanted giant mutant monster fights. And the fact that, Rocksteady and Bebop were omitted from the first film was a great injustice for me. And although they were also omitted from the second film, I found it a little bit more acceptable that they did manage to squeeze in some, evil mutants. And of course, that super shredder fight at the end, Vanilla Ice notwithstanding, what I think is one of the best sequences in both movies. That's an awesome fight scene.
Which movie is Casey Jones in? Because I think Casey Jones deserves a couple minutes here.
Yeah, he's in the first one.
He's in the first one. I think he appears in all of them in a smaller capacity. But the first movie is the one where he has that great scene at the beginning where he fights Raphael and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And they're one-upping each other.
Right. That's great. I mean, I was watching the cartoon the other day just to kind of go back and revisit it. But it's so funny because I don't know if you guys have seen it recently, but they do a Clint Eastwood impersonation. It's so Clint Eastwood, and there are all these little Clint Eastwood jokes in it. Raphael's oh, he's just like a character from the Filthy Harry movies, but you got to see it. It's instead of Dirty Harry, it's crazy that Casey Jones went from, it was just a complete Clint Eastwood kind of ripoff.
Well, and that's another thing that they touch on in the documentary, that they made Casey Jones just a dude who watched too many movies and decided he wanted to be a vigilante. He doesn't have any other backstory besides that. It's not like someone killed his parents in front of him, or he got bit by a radioactive spider. It's just he watched a lot of movies and was I want to do this.
and his weapons are just kind of hanging around the apartment, right? Just empty out the golf bag and whatever's there, just a toaster, a baseball bat, just fill it up.
So wait, did you go back and watch the cartoon in preparation for this panel, or just for some other reason?
No, I mean, kind of in preparation, but I had seen the movie, which recently, a week ago, the one that just came out, and a lot of people, I heard a lot of different things from different people about it. So I was just in the mood, but then to prep a little bit. But it was weird to see it because it kind of just washes right back over you, even when we were just talking about the video game and turning off the things underwater, it's so weird when you hear those, you could kind of feel exactly how you felt, when you're watching that the first time.
You remember all the quotes, and also the way that each quote's inflected. Every syllable is kind of still in your head in a weird way.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Yeah.
Has anyone else tried to go back and watch any of the old cartoon movie stuff, and was it different than you remembered?
I haven't, but I want to now.
It was weird. When I watched the TMNT movie that came out in, I think it was 2007, the computer-generated one, I walked out of that one and I was wow, I don't remember Raphael being that much of a dick. And my friends were no, he was. So I don't know. That's why I'd be curious to go back and watch the older stuff and see if I think Raphael was that much of a dick. Because I definitely don't remember him being that much of a dick in the older stuff.
I always had such a crush on Michelangelo, and I wonder if I went back and watched them, if I'd still be that attracted to a turtle.
I think that what I actually like about that 2007 movie is that it was sort of done in the continuity of the live action films. And so I think if you went back and watched the original live action films, you would see that sort of dickishness that Raphael has. However, I think the cartoon, he's, much softer. In that original series, I watched a bit of it, not too long ago, sort of while I was working on the book, and, I was struck by how the pacing of children's television has changed, in 25 years. So it's kind of amazing, actually, like, how slow it is to get started, how it sort of drags out the story over several episodes, and then, how weird the world is. I mean, every character kind of has some sort of grotesque element to them. And there's like grandmothers on the street with automatic weapons in their shopping carts. It's just like this strange stuff that kind of gets tucked into the show.
I totally agree. The pacing was really interesting. Like the first episode is like, it's really good. Like, I mean, it almost felt Tarantino-esque, and like, the flashback story. It's like we're thrown in this world. The turtles aren't revealed for a few minutes. And then, the picture 30 years ago, we have no idea what this whole show is. We're watching it for the first time. It's like right at the point where you're like, what is going on? Then they go to the flashbacks, and it begins in, and you see, the whole story with the ooze and everything like that. I mean, it was very interesting, like the credit that they gave young kids at that time, to stick with it and understand. I mean, it was confusing. But somehow I guess it worked.
It was a major feature of this new movie that Michelangelo is kind of creeping on April O'Neil. I don't remember that I remember them kind of having a crush on April maybe, but I don't remember it being creepy. If I went back and watched it, would I find it creepy, or was that a
He was definitely always the flirtier one, I think. I don't think it was as blatant as they do in the new movie, but he was definitely like, he was more of the charmer, if I remember correctly, as the one who had a crush on him.
Right. You might be
I remember him
that up.
Yeah, maybe that's just how I want to remember him being. But I don't remember it being as blatant as it was in this movie.
It was a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of crushes, William Ryan on Facebook also noted that lots of boys had crushes on April O'Neil, that she was a sort of a major like sex icon for 8-year-old boys or whatever in the early 80s.
Yeah, totally.
I always saw her as kind of as a big sister character in a way. I mean, they say weird stuff to her in the cartoon, but I don't remember the specifics. They almost treat her like a younger sister in the original films. And then, what I found interesting about the sort of the retelling of the origin in the new movie was that, she's very much an older sister to them, which makes Michelangelo's behavior, I guess, a little bit weirder.
Maybe that's why it's so creepy.
What's cool is in the animated series, the turtles are significantly shorter than she is, and then now in the new movie, they're bigger,
huge,
which is really weird.
Well, and in the movies too, the original movies, they were shorter.
Yeah,
I don't know if I understand the decision to make them as big as they did in this new movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, because in the older movies, they're kind of like cute, they're kind of like cute and fun and like teenagers you hang out with. And in this new movie, I mean, Raphael looks like he could rip the head off of Buffalo. I mean, he's so freaking big and scary looking. And it to my mind, it just totally changes the whole character of the show.
Yeah, and I was trying to sit there and picture, like, what would these 4 guys look like if they were human? I mean, if they're still teenagers, they're no more than 18 or 19, right? And how could they be that jacked? It's like they're all played by Taylor Lautner or something like that.
I guess before we get too much into the newest movie, does anyone have anything they want to say about Turtles in Time or TMNT, the 2007 movie, or anything? Isn't there a Nickelodeon cartoon too that's precedes the?
So I'll talk about the show a lot, but quickly I'll mention Turtles in Time. Turtles in Time was awesome. It was sort of like the arcade follow-up to that original, the 4-player sort of beat-em-up arcade game.
Yeah.
And it was awesome because you got to like see foot soldiers in cowboy hats, and you got to fight prehistoric turtles, and you got to go to the far future where Krang is floating around in a UFO and turning you into a tiny turtle. There's like all sorts of weird stuff. There were hoverboards. And it's just such a great format that I think a lot of games are missing today, that, 4-player cooperative, sort of you against the machine thing, and not have it be a first-person game like, every other game.
Right.
See, man, I was actually talking about
the movie,
live-action movie. Wasn't it called Turtles? Wasn't it called Turtles in Time?
Turtles in Time, yeah.
Well, that's crazy because there is an arcade game called Turtles in Time, which is different from the third movie, right? The third movie is the one where they go back to feudal Japan.
Yeah.
High foot. That was the line I remember from that one.
Oh, that's right.
A high foot.
I actually never saw that one. Is it? It's good?
What? No, of course it's not good.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter.
It was better than the sequel, though, right? It wasn't better than I saw those two. I haven't seen in years. Since I was a kid. But I remember it being better than two.
Because I think Turtles in Time tried to go back to the real grittiness of the first movie. They realized, because I learned this in the documentary as well, but the first movie was so successful that they got the second movie out in a year, which is insane for the late 80s, early 90s, or whenever that came out. Like, movies these days barely come out in a year, So they just obviously piecemealed that second movie together, and then I think they were like, okay, wait a minute, let's actually work on a script for the third one. So is it great? No. Is it better than the second one? Yeah, probably.
Well, because I looked those movies up on Rotten Tomatoes, and the first movie is 40%, and I was like, what, 40%? Come on, I love that movie. So yeah, I guess I'm asking more compared to the other movies. Is it good? How does it rate compared to the first movie, which I absolutely loved?
I don't think I've seen it recently enough to say that kind of comparison. I mean, the thing is like, there's so many movies I watched as a kid that are terrible, but I love them because it involved, the properties that I loved. So Turtles in Time will always have a place in my heart.
All right, cool. And Allison or David, did you see the TMNT 2007 movie? Do you have any thoughts about that one?
I did. Oh, sorry, Allison.
No, I was just going to say, I completely forgot it existed. I didn't see it.
I saw it when it came out, so I don't remember it that well. I remember it, I've seen the new, the new Nickelodeon show, the style of them. I guess that was kind of the halfway point, right? The TMNT 2007 between like the old classic and kind of where we are now and how they looked, right? They started looking less and less specific, right? With the animation. I remember that being a little bit of bit difficult to see.
Wait, what do you mean by less specific?
It's like, well, right, the new Nickelodeon show, it's kind of very little detail in just how they're drawn. It's like very
sort of minimalist.
Yeah, minimalist. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And I feel like the TMNT, even though obviously the graphics were better because we've advanced with computers, I don't know, it just didn't have that same heart. It looked like it was lacking something. I remember the art kind of threw me off. I remember. And no one feels that way.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think because we grew up seeing our turtles one way, when you manipulate that at all, it just kind of screws with our sentimentality towards them, I mean, maybe the kids these days like the way they're looking, but it's weird to me.
I think someone was talking about, I don't know if we touched on this earlier, what I loved about, I think, successful cartoons, whether it's Bart Simpson or the Turtles, I think it's how easy are they to draw when you're a kid. And I think that was really fun with the Turtles. Again, I don't know if it was just the heart or whatever was put into that original series. I could draw it now, and have it kind of look and feel similar. It was just something about the proportions, the kind of slightly googly-eyed look to them, and it just, those, like Allison said, I think those were the Turtles we grew up with. So of course any cartoon specifically is going to be very, I think, difficult for an old fan to kind of get behind.
One of the things that I really appreciated about the 2007 animated movie was that I think that it really got to the heart of what the conflict is between the turtles. Like one of the things that stands out to me across the board for the property as a whole is how distinct each of the four of them are in personality. They may all look the same and just have their bandanas to tell them apart, but they have strikingly different personalities. And what the '07 movie did was it really captured the tension between Leonardo and Raphael as the point of drama in how they view, heroism and brotherhood, all of the sort of issues that the story plays with, and brings it to a head in that movie. There's a really drawn out epic fight scene between the two of them, which I think is something that had never been done before in any Ninja Turtle story, was have two of the brothers actually fighting each other for real. And it resonated with me in a really kind of interesting way, because it's these two are the turtles that, where a lot of the drama is sort of focused around, whereas the others often just kind of provide a sort of support role. And then in the new series, it's a very similar kind of thing, where the drama of that whole series is about the tension and the relationship between Leonardo and Raphael.
Well, and that's actually one of the things I really enjoyed about the new movie, was how specific each of the turtles were. Like, obviously going into it, we already know their role, but this new movie, they gave Donatello glasses, and Raphael wears his mask like it's a do-rag, and Michelangelo has random necklaces on and things like that. They're not only were their personalities so specific, but just looking at them, you instantly knew who all of them were, without even having to hear them speak. It wasn't just a differentiation in the color of their masks. It was actually how they looked and how they were standing and that kind of stuff. They even had different teeth, which I loved.
Yeah, I agree. I think the performances of all the new turtles and how they looked, they were gigantic, and was that strange? Sure, but I think they really looked real. I mean, that sounds insane, but they looked like sometimes when you have actors acting next to computers, CGI or whatever, it doesn't really feel integrated. But I completely agree with Allison. I mean, they were really four separate, turtles and four separate personalities. It was great.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I agree that they looked real and they looked, scary, which isn't how I really imagined them. But they did look good in that sense. But I actually didn't like that either in that movie, in the 2007 movie, or in the new one, the turtles all fighting with each other. Because my conception of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is that they're just all having fun, and it's just a fun time, and they're all laughing and joking around and kicking butt. And I don't like it when they're just yelling at each other and squabbling. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't fun. This isn't the laugh stuff I signed up for.
But I think that's kind of the teenage aspect of it, or when dogs play fight and they look like they're fighting, but they're really playing. I think they kind of have that rough and tumble teenage nature, maybe where they're kind of shoving each other around, and it's not really how adults would do it. I think they're just so, I don't know. That's kind of how I.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it because they are brothers, and as someone who has a brother, we fight. It's they're family. They should fight. It's a little weird if it's all. It's good for kids when we go back and watch the TV show and they all just get along really well. But as adults, I think you want to see sort of the true nature of what family is.
I think when Leonardo and Raphael were facing off in this new movie, that doesn't look at all like play fighting to me. I mean, they look like they're ready to kill each other.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I know. I guess I didn't disagree with it at all, though. I think I found it kind of cool because I felt like we were sort of stepping into a moment that had a lot of backstory that we didn't get yet, we were meeting these guys right when they were at the cusp of the straw potentially breaking the camel's back, which I thought, I didn't think this new movie was anything great, but I really enjoyed the turtles in it. I wish there was more turtles and less humans.
Well, and speaking of the backstory, there was quite a bit of backstory in this movie presented in fairly awkwardly positioned flashbacks.
So strange. I thought the beginning, I thought it took too long to get to the turtles. I think 15 minutes to get to them is fine, but they could have removed 5 minutes with the animation in the beginning. I don't get what we got from that. Do you guys remember that? It was like
I don't even remember the animation
so
in
weird.
the beginning.
It was very it seemed very out of place.
The credit sequence kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, I think it was even after the.
It was right after the credits. You're right.
After the credits. They were kind of explaining the origin story, but it seems so odd to do that. Like, who doesn't know the origin story? You know what I mean? And it wasn't like a totally new take on it.
I have a feeling that the whole first half of that movie felt like a bunch of reshoots to make stuff make sense. So I have a feeling that animation was added after the fact.
Absolutely.
Like that, and right after April comes away from the docks, and she goes back to the newspaper, and then the news, Channel 6. And then she goes back to the docks. She's like riding her bike, and then there's a weird scene where she like pulls over and talks to some dude via FaceTime on her phone. And he's like, if you have any more questions, just go back to the docks and talk to my dude. And then all of a sudden she ends up at the docks at night. And you're like, that scene was added because they realized they had no reason for April to go back to the docks. But like, this dude on FaceTime never appears in the movie again. The whole first 20, 30 minutes of the movie felt so piecemeal to me that I was like, just not into it. And then when the turtles finally got on screen and they were so fun, I was like, oh, thank God, at least here's something to watch,
Well, but I mean, in a sense, they had to cover the backstory because they had changed. I mean, like in the cartoon, Splinter was a dude who had gotten turned into a rat man.
Right.
And then he found the turtles who had just gotten ooze accidentally spilled on them, I think. That's how I remember it.
Yeah,
And then they changed it in the first live-action movie to make it so that Splinter was a rat originally who learned karate and then became a human, like a human/rat. And then this was even more random in this movie where he had like learned karate from a book.
Yeah.
And then for some reason he grew up faster than the turtles and stuff. I don't know. All that stuff.
I took it that he was older in the lab, like when they had them in the labs.
He was an adult rat and they were baby turtles, and that's why.
That's kind of how I took it. But yeah, it's because I believe they shot the whole movie. Remember, there was that whole big controversy when Michael Bay came out and was like, "Yeah, they're actually going to be aliens," and everyone's like, "What do you mean they're going to be aliens? They're mutants. They're not supposed to be aliens," So I think they shot most of the movie with the turtles being aliens and then had to readjust it. So it's like, oh no, they were mutants. And I think that's why the whole backstory doesn't quite make sense.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah. But the things that killed me were like, when it's because, April O'Neil saves them from the lab fire and puts them in the sewer. Like, why would she put them in the sewer? They were her pets, kind of, and they were, she loved those things. I'm like, if I saved the 4 little turtles, I would have just taken them home with me and kept them as pets. It's like her dad dies in the fire, and at the end, it's like Shredder's like, no, I killed him, or not even Shredder, fucking the other dude. What's his name? Shredder's,
I don't even know what.
Just say William Fichtner.
Yeah.
But yeah, William Fichtner. Yeah, William Fichtner's like, no, I shot him, and you're like, what? What was the point of that? Why did we need that motivation? Like, that made no sense to me.
The strangest
whatsoever.
The strangest Shredder thing I think of all time was like the big fight at the end on top of the tower. And I was getting back into the film. Like, I loved the snow chase scene. I thought was amazing. I thought that was so much fun, and I was like slowly getting back into it. And then it's like Shredder like has these crazy hands and like 1,000 knives and all this type of stuff. And he like approaches, unless I'm going crazy and I totally envision this, doesn't he have just like a MacBook set up? And he has like his like little tiny Shredder fingers come out like in gloves. And he's like typing on the computer, trying to get like the mutagen to come out. It was like he was kind of fending them off and like, wait a second, like what's the Wi-Fi password? It was like they should have had some lackey sign. Like it was just the dorkiest. Like, how is this the baddest guy alive? And he's.
I will be honest though, those Shredder, the fact that he shot out knives and then he could like magnetically pull them back, that was really cool.
No, that was great, but did that happen or did I dream about this? I mean,
you're right. He goes up and types on it. It's not a MacBook, but yeah, he types on a little computer.
Well, like a tough book. It was probably a tough book.
A tough book.
Whoever paid the studio the money, that's
right.
Yes. That's what computer it was.
But I thought that was really, really strange.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a perfect movie, but for me, like the scenes with the turtles and Will Arnett, I think people can go see that movie solely for Will Arnett's performance because he's so freaking funny in it. But you know, everything else, like there's another scene where they have to get to the top of the building, so you know, Donatello's like, we gotta run through here and go to the elevators, and then they run through this door, and there's like thousands of dudes with machine guns standing there, who all just start firing at them, and they run the other way and lock the doors, and they're like, can't take the elevator, and then literally the next scene is them in an elevator.
But I love
so
that. So
explain to me, I know, that elevator scene is my favorite scene in the movie, mind you, but I feel like they shot the elevator scene and then, you know, like wrote themselves into a corner by having them not be able to go out that way, and then they're like, well, screw it, we still want the elevator scene in there. So I don't know, you know, there's just, it had script problems. Let's just say that.
Well, David, do you want to talk that snow action slide down the hill scene you said you liked? Would you want to talk about what it was you liked about that scene?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the trailer, the one image that always stuck with me in all the different trailers that I saw for the film was that kind of slow motion shot. I forget who it is, if it's Raphael or whoever.
I think it's Raphael, yeah.
Doing the flip and slamming into the tank. And there was something, again, it was just, you watch some films with animation and CGI or whatever it is, and it doesn't look clean, and it doesn't look in the environment. And to me, this really felt in the environment. It reminded me of an old James Bond movie. I'm trying to think of which one it was. When they're I think it's a Timothy Dalton one. I think it's The Living Daylights.
Yeah, Living Daylights.
And they're sliding on the cello case. Like it was very emblematic of that, which was just a fun scene. You're taking something that's completely insane. So you have this truck that's going off a cliff, or James Bond on the cello, and bullets flying and all this stuff happening, and it's so unrealistic, and in the wrong hands, it could be written off as the worst scene in the world. And I got to give credit to the director and all of the actors, I mean, for making that really the best scene. I just thought it was really exhilarating, action-packed, perfect blend of the CGI, the humor, everything about it was I think a lot of fun.
Yeah, they did a really good job of keeping the turtles' personalities up and light and funny during this crazy action scene, which I think is really what the turtles are. Like, you know, they are action heroes, and they do go off and fight all these baddies, but they do it with humor and jokes and that kind of stuff. And they didn't lose that in that scene, which I thought was really cool. And you know what this movie did a really good job of is having them really use their shells, which beyond like the jokes of them like pulling their heads into their shells when someone like throws a punch at them, I don't feel like the TV shows and the movies have really done that. And these guys, like this movie, really utilized their shells a lot, which I liked.
Yeah, cool. See, Matt, did you have any other things about this movie you wanted to say?
Yeah, well, a lot of it's been touched on already, I think. But I really love the character design specifically. Just that they felt more lived in a lot of ways. They had scars and cracks in their shells, and they're wearing clothes, and they have just like, they feel more like they exist in the real world. You know, I never quite got over the sort of spongy puppet, style of the original films. And I thought the action sequences were good. And I don't know. I found a lot of it much more enjoyable than I thought I was going to. I went into it pretty cynical. But it was a fun time. The fight scenes were good and, held my interest. I'd like to see another one that doesn't feel obligated to retell the origin. Because so much kind of got cluttered in, I think, trying to stay true to the original story, set up this new world so that they could tell their story. It was weird, like, for a movie that seemed to care so little about the sort of setup, it spent a lot of time on it. So I'm looking forward to seeing 2 hours of, kung fu high kicking.
Well, you're in luck because they're already making the sequel. So.
Yay! They're making a sequel. It's been so long since Hollywood's done that. A sequel of a successful movie. So that'll be great. That'll be a great change of pace.
Yeah.
Speaking of wearing clothes, they didn't do the thing where the turtles wear their hats and trench coats and just walk around unobserved.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
the
that.
Groucho Marx glasses, which Matt talked about earlier. They used to wear those too.
So what do you guys think? Do you guys know anything about the sequel? Presumably Shredder is going to come back as some sort of mutant or something. Is that what we're supposed to expect?
Oh, because he got the ooze on him?
Yeah, the last shot he's lying dead or mortally wounded on the pavement, and then the ooze. It looks like he was sort of touching the ooze or something. That's how I interpreted
but
that.
wasn't that this confused me as well. Maybe you guys can help me out with this. I thought that tube, right? It's the tube he grabbed from April. That contained the cure to this virus that they were going to plug out into the ozone, right? Didn't April get the cure? So that tube that was broken next to him was the cure. It was the mutagen that was in the turtle's blood. But then they cut back to the turtles in the sewers with Splinter, and they're saving Splinter's life with the cure. So that was something that confused me. I was like, wasn't the tube broken? Does anyone else remember this, or am I crazy?
I don't know. I'm totally confused now. But I thought that he was Shredder was going to launch this stuff over the city, and that was going to kill everyone. And that
no. He wanted to make everyone. Sorry, he wanted to make everyone sick. So they kidnap the turtles and take their blood because their blood contains the mutagen, and in the mutagen is a cure to this virus that he wants to pump out over the city. So he could pump it out over the city, and then he's the one with the cure, and then he makes like $1 billion because of that. So he didn't want to actually kill everyone. But that's what I mean. So April had taken the tube of the stuff, and I think it's like Raphael like yells to her like, get it to Splinter because this is what could save his life. Because he's dying. And then the tube's broken next to Shredder, but then the very next scene, they're saving Splinter. See, none of this made sense to me.
Well, maybe
this was my problem with the movies.
But it might be like a flu vaccine where even though you're treating it, you're really putting the flu inside the person. So maybe I agree. I think the point was that he's going to come back as some type of mutant. But I think they should forget about that and just bring back Krang, because
yes.
like a modern day Krang with our technology now would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that was always my favorite part of the cartoon, all the more science fictional aspects and parallel worlds and all that kind of stuff.
Well, then you should watch the new animated series on Nickelodeon. Because it really goes back to... It goes back to that style in a lot of ways. They reimagine everything for the new series. And one of the things that they do is they take Krang back to his comic roots, which is that it's a race of these brain aliens that go around in human robot bodies to blend in. And just the way that they're depicted in the show is so funny, genuinely funny. It's really, really great interpretation, and I think that they could do some weird stuff with it in a live action movie. That show is actually, I think, really good. I think it was clearly designed with the intent that it would be a show that parents who were fans of the original series can watch it with their kids now, and everyone gets something out of it. There are a lot of callbacks to the old movies and the old cartoon, but it is updated in almost a sort of Pixar-esque kind of way. It does really have a really nice charm to it.
And I hear that the Mad Libs book that ties in with it is really quite well done.
Shameless plug. Well, the Mad Libs book is connected to the show, story-wise. But the show itself, I'm not connected with the show in any way. And just as a fan who watched the first season, it's great. They have some fairly big name actors in the show, and it really, the depictions of the four turtles are just so spot on. It's consistently funny. I think it's definitely from that. It's the Nickelodeon that made Avatar and Legend of Korra. Like, it's that kind of much more sophisticated animation for the network. So I think it's great.
Matt, I am curious about the Mad Libs book though, because I didn't even know you had written this until you just mentioned it. But yeah. What does a TMNT Mad Libs book look like?
It's your standard book of Mad Libs. The sort of skinny vertical book that flips from the top. And just like any other sort of traditional Mad Libs book, it's stories about the turtles, and with all the blanks in that you and your friends can fill in and come up with hilarious, little short stories. My personal favorite is the one that talks about all of the turtles' favorite pizza recipes. You can imagine how gross that can get.
Yeah, they didn't capitalize that enough in the movie either. I mean, they were eating pizza, but not pizza with weird things on it, because that was like their thing.
Yeah, there was, I think, one in the original cartoon was refried clams.
Ugh.
I don't know what a refried clam is, but it sounds disgusting.
Ugh.
All right, so we're running a little short on time here. I did want to ask Allison and David about some stuff. So Allison, we mentioned last time you were on the show that you're on this show called the Team Unicorn Saturday Action Fun Hour.
Yeah.
And now it occurs to me that this is a show with 4 characters, all of who wear a different colored costume, right?
Yeah.
So is this the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of today? Is this the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I mean, if it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for adults, yeah, it could possibly be that. It's definitely, even though it looks and sounds like a show for kids, it is definitely not a show for kids, since it will hopefully be on Adult Swim. But the 4 of us have talked about that and about which turtle we would be. And sadly, my character on Team Unicorn means that I am not Michelangelo. I am Donatello. But yeah, we definitely sort of fit that, the characteristics of the turtles in a lot of ways.
So is your character is kind of a science nerd, kind of?
Yes,
or?
I am called the bookish one. I'm the nerdy. I'm kind of like the Velma. If we're going to Scooby Doo, I'm Velma.
And do you guys eat pizza?
We don't eat pizza. We wouldn't fit in our costumes if we did. We have to look very sleek in our animated selves. But we definitely have like the purple. The purple one is our leader. The colors don't match up, obviously, because like this wasn't something we thought of. Also, we didn't want to just copy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right, but the purple one is our leader, and the green one, she's our aggressive one. She'd be like our Raphael, and the pink one's like our Michelangelo, and I'm the blue one, and I'm like Donatello.
All right, cool. Sounds good. And so, David, I mentioned in your intro that you have a movie coming out called Turtle Island.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like something that might appeal to Turtles fans.
Maybe. It's kind of like a crazy drama thriller, found footage type film. And I got the idea for it because I went camping, and it turned out to be a really creepy camping trip. And where we were camping was called Turtle Island, so I stole it right from that. But yeah, I mean, that's the only, no Ninja Turtles in it, but hopefully that will come out soon.
No turtles, period, in it, actually.
Yeah, maybe, no turtle references, nothing. But a lot of violence and a little gore, so maybe that's kind of Ninja Turtle-esque.
So do any of your other movies bear any sort of Mutant Ninja Turtle influence?
Let me think. No, I don't think so. One of my movies, The Stand-Up, is set in a kindergarten, and if we want to really bring the conversation back, that's where I fell in love with the Turtles to begin with, so I guess we could go there. But other than that, no.
All right, cool. And so if people want to track all your projects and stuff, where do they follow you online?
You know what? It's terrible because I'm such good friends with Allison, and she is like the online queen. And you know what? I think I'm gonna announce it here officially. Maybe you need to set some stuff up for me because I literally do not have a Twitter. I do not have a Facebook. I have none of that. So I kind of just, when they come out on iTunes or in theaters, I blast it out like that.
So just like if people want more information, they should just email Allison and she'll
That's exactly right. Allison's my publicist.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And Allison, do you have any news or anything you want to mention since last time?
Well, if you aren't one of the gabillion people who already watches NCIS, I will be on the season premiere in September. I think it's September 23rd, so check that out. And hopefully, knock on wood, we should be hearing about this Team Unicorn Saturday Action Fun Hour if we're going to series in the next month or so. So
it looks amazing.
Yeah. We released a trailer at Comic-Con and it got a lot of love, so knock on wood. Come on, Adult Swim, let's do this.
And so where online would people keep an eye out for announcements about that?
Oh, people can follow me on Twitter. It's just Allison Hayslip. And I tend to tweet out everything I'm doing, probably much to the, chagrin of some of my friends.
All right, great. And I mentioned Matt has his first novel is coming out, The Eighth Continent, in about a month now. We talked about it quite a bit on the last episode. Any updates on Matt you want to mention?
Just a few weeks now. Yeah, it comes out September 16th. Should be available everywhere. So look for The Eighth Continent. Yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, cool. So I think we're going to wrap things up there. So guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
And that was our panel. For more interviews and panels, visit us at geeksguideshow.com. Thanks.